Hey, I'm Jay Kumar, the BassBlaster, and this is your Seafoam Kistler Top 5 of the Week in Bass Fishing. Number 1. Alright, if you're not one of these guys, with your eyes glued to the screens in your bassin' spaceship, or maybe even if you are, here's a few baits your fish probably won't be seeing in the pre-spawn pingdom kingdom, and when those fish hit the bank. Let's talk about some old school ways of catching them that your fish may have not seen in a while.
It is also possible that they were hunted near the shore with spears.
Not that long. Anyhow, number 1 is wake baits. Now, when our favorite fish start to cruise shallow but haven't locked down yet, or maybe haven't locked down yet, tie on one of these bad boys and slow reel it back on top of the water, making a wake. Now, as with any bait category, there are a lot of wake baits to choose from, including some real good modern jointed wake baits. But I'm talking old school here, so here are a couple options. First up is the Bomber Long A. Even though chartreuse flash, black back, orange belly is a real tough color to beat in that bait, the best color for waking in the early spring is bone. Why? The fish like it. Now, you might have to use a lighter rod or even a braid to mono, not fluoro, setup to really heave it a long way if you want to, but that bait can be the deal. Another even older school wake bait is the Cotton Cordell Redfin. But the oldest of the old school wake baits that I can almost guarantee that your fish have never seen is the OG Rapala Floater. It also comes in the jointed version.
Like a quarter pounder, man.
No, not that kind of joint. This one. Yeah, that's the one. It's also called the Broken Back Rapala. I've caught many a bass on that deal years ago, and I know it'll still work. Moving on to number 2. All right, number 2 in old school spring baits. Here's a hint. You know it, prop baits. Now, I'm no expert with these baits, but I'm pretty darn sure that your bass haven't seen one unless maybe you live in Florida or a few other areas where guys still fish them. The props give this topwater bait a completely different action and sound than your walkers and ploppers. And those props also keep it from moving forward too far on each pull, which is key for fish that don't want to chase. Now, the oldest school one of these that I'm aware of is the Cotton Cordell Boy Howdy, which some top tour pros still fish in certain circumstances. One deal about this bait is it sits straight up and down on the paws. You gotta think most fish don't ever see something like that. Now, a couple more good ones in my experience are the Berkeley Spin Rocket and the Yozuri 3DB prop, which only has a back prop. Jerk it, walk it, pause it.
Pop it.
Kind of like,
Walk this way, talk this way.
yeah, walk it that way, man. Number 3. When the chatterbait came along and blew up bass fishing in a good way, followed by the mighty jackhammer, the bladed jig was so good and caught them so well that for many years a lot of people forgot about the old reliable spinnerbait, or some never even learned to fish it. That's how long the bladed jig's dominance has been, and it's still going. Now, it was still happening even during things like Edwin Evers' 2016 Bassmaster Classic win, which was partly on a spinnerbait, and Jason Christie came in second in that event, also on a spinnerbait. Of course, other classics before them were won on spinnerbaits, but that was before the chatterbait. Anyhow, when's the last time your fish saw a spinnerbait? Another great reason to fish them is that right now we have some of the best spinnerbaits ever made. And not just custom ones, I mean mass-produced ones with great components, top-notch, and they don't roll. One is the Jason Christie designed Booyah Covert Series spinnerbaits, and also the Edwin Evers designed Berkeley Power Blade spinnerbaits. Now, both also come in finesse sizes if that's your deal in the spring or any other time, and there's a lot of other great spinnerbaits out there too. So when everybody around you on your lake is shredding water with those chatterbaits, maybe chuck a Suddler spinnerbait in the same areas and see what happens.
That could work.
Homer knows, man. Number 4. Okay, pretty much everybody and their uncle knows that Rapala Shad Raps are the deal in the pre-spawn and colder water in general. Now, if you don't know about them, that crankbait will absolutely catch them in tough conditions. If you don't fish it too fast or too hard. Like Jacob Wheeler says,
you know, with a bait like the Shad Rap, is a way to get bit when nothing else is working.
Now you might have noticed that he's fishing that bait on a spinning rod, which is what most guys do because that Shad Rap in the number 5 or 7 size is a light bait. Now a couple similar baits that people like are the Berkeley Bad Shad and the Yozuri 3DRX Shad, and there's a bunch of other ones too, but it's hard to beat the old Balsa Shad Rap. OG Raps are the best.
It's one death rapper. I know I can hang. I'm Reverend Run DMC, like Cooper Cool in the gang.
The King of Rock, boys. Number 5. Back before the internet, forward-facing sonar, and anti-gravity jig heads, life was like this.
All right now, baby, it's all right now.
It was all right. It was simple. No computers on the boat, and the most technical word in bass fishing was jitterbug. So before we had forward-facing sonar and before Gussie blew up the world with his 12-fish Bassmaster Classic Wind pinging a minnow, the way guys sometimes would fish for suspended cold water bass was with a float and fly. Now it's basically a bigger version of a jig, a little jig under a float that you use to fish for crappies. I don't know who came up with it first, but I'm betting the crappie guys. Now either way, the float and fly caught bass in the right conditions, which again was winterish cold water and suspended fish. Now that we have forward-facing sonar, I'm honestly shocked that a high-level wind hasn't happened with it for a few reasons. One, it keeps the bait at a steady depth, meaning it doesn't keep sinking. Two, you can fish as small or big of a bait under that float as you want. From a tiny crappie fly to probably a 6 or 7 inch worm if you want it. And 3, with forward-facing sonar, you can watch the fish get the bait. Now that sometimes was an issue, feeling the bite or seeing the bite with the old float and fly, because the water was so cold and the fish were so lethargic they would barely touch that fly. In other words, they weren't yanking down on it like a bobber and a bluegill bite. Anyhow, I mean, what's not to love about this rig? Everyone knows how to fish something under a bobber. It makes me wonder if guys would be embarrassed to win a tournament with a fly under a float. But man, it's fun to float.
I don't care where, I wanna just float, float, float.
That's all I got for you this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Seafoam and Kistler. See you next week. God bless you.